working with bees all my life. My father was a migratory beekeeper, so I grew up in the business. Been playing and working with bees for, I guess, 50 years. That makes me 50 years old then. If we go back years back in our history, as well as back in Europe and even in Bible times, it would be very common for a farmer to have a few beehives on the edge of his farm somewhere. There is evidence of beekeeping thousands of years ago in Egypt. There are actually people taking care of bees on the Nile. Bees were not in America when we settled America. They actually came from Europe. So believe it or not, there would be wagon trains. There were a few beehives on the wagons. At the back of the wagon train, they would have a wagon that had beehives. Or if they were moving up a river, there would be a few hives on the back of a barge or a boat. So honeybees have moved across America as we settled this country. As commercial beekeeping became more popular back in the 1800s, a man named Langstroth developed a beehive, which was a wooden box with frames that you could take out and you could inspect the inside of a hive. So we can pull out a honeycomb and we can look for the queen. We can see how the brood looks, how the young bees look, how much honey is there. You can do all this manipulation with a movable comb hive. And in this box we'll have 8 or 10 of these frames of honeycombs. And each of them has to have enough space around it so the bees can bring in new honey, they can work, they can walk, they can live there. Beehives are very important to our environment. Without bees there would be many crops, many different food items that we just wouldn't have. Apples, cherries, cantaloupe, squash, almonds, many crops that really need honeybees for pollination, so we have food to eat. Beeswax is used, of course, for candles, but it's also used for polishes and waxes. It's used for cosmetics, even in heart surgery. When they cut the sternum to open up your chest for heart surgery, they use beeswax to coat that sternum so it protects it and until it grows back together. The propolis is collected from the tree buds, for several reasons actually. It has actually an antiseptic value. When the honeybees have their hive, they want to protect it. They want to make sure that they don't have other bees coming in cracks and places around where there's access to their hive. So they fill in the cracks and the voids with propolis for a sealer, like caulking, or just to keep the weather out. The queen will live 2 to 3 years, and during the productive time of the year when flowers are blooming and they're getting ready for a honey crop, they want to have a strong colony. So she will lay eggs every day, from 1,500 to 2,000 eggs per day she's laying. So she's very productive during her lifetime. She stays in the hive. The only time that she would leave the hive is if the colony gets too crowded. The worker bee is what most bees are. It's a female. Their main job is to keep the hive clean, take care of the brood, the young bees, and of course going out, flying out to flowers for nectar and for pollen. The nectar they bring back is not honey yet. The nectar that they bring back is very thin and watery. They'll collect that nectar, bring it back to the hive, and they put it in honeycombs, and they actually, with you could say an air conditioning technique, by just just moving their wings fast enough to move air through the hive, they dry down that moisture, and so the nectar will become honey because they need to bring the moisture down for that. And the process of the bees bringing it back changes it as well, while the bees are carrying it back to the hive. One hive in one day can actually produce about 3 gallons of honey. In one day, with that many bees working, to produce 3 gallons of honey takes about 4 gallons of nectar. So there's a lot of moisture in the nectar that has to be removed from the nectar in the process of turning it to honey. Last one is the drone. He has kind of an easy life most of the time. The queen lays drone eggs, so there will be a male bee in the spring of the year because she thinks, well, if this hive gets crowded, we might swarm, and then we'll need another queen in the hive that we leave. So the young queen that is raised in that hive after the old queen leaves with the swarm, the young queen will need to mate with the drone so she can lay eggs. And so that's the purpose for the drone there, is to mate with the young queen. And then the rest of the summer he's not really needed. So it's an easy life most of the summer. All the workers are making the honey. The drones are sitting around taking it easy. If there's a colony of bees in a hollow tree, for instance, it's a limited space. So when the bees fill that area with honey, they need more room. So a natural process to correct that will be swarming, which is when the old queen and half the bees leave that colony, find another place to live. So you're left behind with a weaker colony that will raise a new queen and mate with the drone. The new queen will mate with the drone, and then she'll lay eggs, and this new colony begins, and she'll have more room because the old queen and the excess bees have already left. As a commercial beekeeper, we don't want that to happen, so we just make sure there's plenty of room. They'll never feel crowded, so they won't have to swarm. Cross comb, if you have too much bee space, the bees will say, we've got extra space here, we can build some more comb in there, and so it makes it difficult to pull the frames out. Most of the honey in this area is made from orange trees, citrus trees. So in this area you would look for places where there are plenty of, there are nice large orange groves. You want to make sure that it's a place that's not too close to a highway, because bees will be flying back and forth in the traffic. Don't want that. And you want to find also a place that has water source, so you want to have a lake or a stream or water in the area. And so it's pretty easy to find that here. There are many lakes, and of course there are areas where there are many orange trees, so that's the main things you need for a good bee location. If it is the time of the year there are no flowers blooming that produce nectar, the bees look around and they say, we need something to eat. And you could take, and typically another beehive has guard bees protecting that beehive, because every beehive wants to protect their honey. They don't want to have someone take their honey away from them. So all the colonies, all the hives, any of them could be robber bees if there are no flowers blooming that produce nectar. And they just go out there and find free honey available, and they'll take it back to their hive. Surprisingly, bees can live in very hot conditions. 100 degrees is okay. They fan their wings and air condition their hive, literally, by also bringing in water to help cool the hive, but fanning their wings keeps the air moving, because the young bees need to have about, the temperature should be in the low 90s to keep the colony healthy for where the young bees are growing and the brood is located. So they have to cool it down to 93 degrees on hot days. In the wintertime, they can live when temperatures below zero. They just huddle up and stay close. and don't go anywhere. They don't leave the hive with that kind of weather. But they can stay warm enough where they can weather even temperatures below zero if it's not too windy. We can't have a beehive unprotected out in windy cold conditions, but if it's protected from the wind, they do quite well in hot weather as well as cold weather. Okay, I'll show you the equipment we use for working with the beehives. You typically have a pair of coveralls on. Light color is good, white. And then we have a bee veil. Now if the bees are after you, they're always going to try to sting you in the face or around the eyes. So the bee veil is one of the more important items you're going to use to wear. And then I want to talk about a couple of pieces of equipment that are extremely important. One is the smoker. And the smoker is something that if you want to look at a beehive, you give them a little bit of smoke. And what happens in the beehive is they smell that smoke and they have the idea that perhaps there's a house on fire somewhere, so they need to think about getting ready to leave. And it gets their mind off of you, and it gives you an opportunity to work with the bees and look inside the hive, do some inspecting. Next thing would be a hive tool. And the hive tool, the bees, we talked earlier about the propolis that's collected by the bees from buds of trees. So you need to have a hive tool to pry things apart, and then of course the beeswax of the honeycomb, things get stuck together, so the hive tool is pretty important to pry the lid off and to remove the honeycombs. When God talked to the Israelites about going to their new land, it was going to be a land flowing with milk and honey. Like that was going to be a great thing. I mean, there was plenty, and there was good food, and there was lots of it there. David in the Psalms talks about, "Thy word to me, thy law is sweeter than honey." So it's a positive thing, it's a good thing, and people have always equated that with something sweet, with something good, something natural.